Welcome everyone to what's forgive me, I haven't memorized our official name here. Welcome to the dialogue of mazes of twisty little passages, great dungeon design, and you. I guess we can introduce ourselves. My name is Virginia Black. I am a writer, all-time nerd, gamer. Um, insert a lot of nerdy things here.
Sorry, I was changing my nickname real quick. I'm Jen Sparko. My pronouns are she, her, and I am also into a lot of nerdy things. I've been playing tabletop role playing games since the early '80s, um, and have loved seeing the evolution and the broadening of that world over, especially over the past, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. It's been wonderful, and I write and I podcast and other things, but we're here to talk about dungeons.
So just for full transparency, two things. One, I am recovering from COVID, and
Mm.
it is also that time of year where the earth is trying to kill me. Um, whenever I step outside, which I made the mistake of doing yesterday. Um, and so I apologize. I'll try to mute myself if I hit a coughing fit. Forgive me if I miss. Two, we originally the plan was for us to have a moderator to kind of hit us with questions. But kind of in the spirit of gaming, we're on our own, and we're gonna just dig deep and tread forward on our own. So I uh one last full transparency. I am not a GM. I'm not a DM. So at first I thought, okay, how can I contribute to this discussion? And we talked a little bit briefly about this. Um, but there are so many facets of it. I cannot imagine that there won't be a million and seven things for us to talk about. And so to address that, what I did is I went and interviewed six of my dungeon masters
Oh,
this week and reached out to them and asked a ton of questions, which I'm probably going to end up asking you. But I think a good place to start might be this question of, and I'd love to get your take on this. What's the difference between a good dungeon and a great dungeon?
I saw that in your email, and honestly, I've just been like cogitating about it back and forth for a while. I think a great dungeon is one that stays with you, right? Especially as a player or as a GM, like one that you remember when you're sitting around with your gaming friends, like 3 years later, and you're telling stories about the time that you had to overcome all those traps and get to that monster, or the time that you had to figure out puzzles, or just the time, the way it fit into the overall adventure and how fun it was. And I know that's a really nebulous kind of criteria. I don't think that sticks with you is a thing that you can quantify. It's hard to think of a measurable outcome. A
You know,
phrase I am happy to leave behind.
this is I think the cool thing about having a discussion like this is that we can nitpick at that and pick it apart. So I think about um I've noticed the coughing is more severe when I get super excited. So I'm, trying to CTFD. That if the difference between good and great, you talk about something that sticks with you. Uh sure, if I finish the session and or I finish the challenge, saved the kidnapped person, killed the dragon, got the gold, looted the corpses. I play a lot of rogues.
Hey, me too.
Yeah, looted the corpses. Um, the then it's a couple of near misses. Just got out by the skin of our teeth. Sure, we had a good time. I'm coming back next week. That's a good adventure. Um, I have a challenge where this actually happened, where my backstory is some character I need to kill off because their people killed my family, yada yada yada
Mm,
yada, and I came within a door of killing them, and I missed and
mm,
chickened out because of a Drake, and a bunch of it doesn't even matter. But I will never forget that. Like that whole series of challenges, the way that it tied in specifically to my character. So, as one of these interviews that I conducted this week, these pieces of, um, if you engage with their backstory, if you
yeah.
factor in the narrative, if you provide more detail about the dragon, and the dragon goes from a green dragon to um the description of the teeth and a chunk of the wing that's missing, and like all of these depths of detail without getting really verbose, but just providing more context and color for everything.
Mhm.
There's some greatness.
Yeah. Well, I think that that connection piece is really key. I play in two campaigns and I GM in two campaigns. Like one each of those is weekly and one each is more sporadic. And so that's a lot, right? And so often what I'll do is I will take either little one shots or just maps and things that people have put on like DM's Guild or or in their blogs or whatever, and I'll use those. But I never just drop them. Like I figure out what will connect right
Mhm.
to the characters' backstories or to their like their goals or their skills. I mean, I think that that's really more important than any physical feature.
That's that's really good. I got distracted by Daniel's comment about the spiders. Uh, so let's talk about the way that you, and I guess now I get to interview you.
Uh-oh.
Um,
Okay.
so these options for we talked about in my list of questions, the options for dungeon or map generation, right? When you're looking at slash and hack versus puzzle solving, do you combine the two? And here's an interesting question. There's a million sources, it seems to me, for um encounters.
Mhm.
I've not seen the same thing for traps, although I know there was a couple of newer books that came out recently about trap generation, but that's really new to me. So how do you approach integrating that with okay, I'm going to be indelicate here. Uh what if the everybody's game for puzzles, but you got some folks at the table who are brighter than others. Like, how are you? Seriously, right?
No,
Because
I
you
get
want
it.
to
I
be a
get it.
good time and engage everyone, right? That's the goal, is to get
Yeah,
everybody on board to have
sure.
a good time. But different folks have different experiences.
Right.
So how do you
Right.
tackle that?
Well, I mean, part of it is that you don't like not everyone is going to engage equally all the time.
Hmm.
Right. And I think if you've built it, and it's probably, I'm sure it's harder in a new group. And our group started as my online group that I DM started as a group of basically strangers because it was a pandemic thing. I worked at a library and I said, you know what, let's have the library sponsor a weekly D&D thing. And so it was, it was really rough at first. Um, and it was a little bit of trial and error for sure. But I think as you get to know people and you build up some trust, so we actually have just done a puzzle intensive little mini one shot that because we started this as a kind of a generic thing, it's set in the Forgotten Realms. I know, but this one character is a like has worships Helm, right? Who look, y'all, I don't want to be again, I don't want to be indelicate, but Helm is a dick. Like lawful neutral is my least favorite alignment for real. And I thought Helm is just the guy who would say to this wayward follower who's trying to earn his way back into the god's favor, cool, I'm listening. I'm willing to talk about letting you back and letting you redeem yourself, but you're going to have to, jump through a bunch of hoops. Like you're going to have to prove yourself to me, not necessarily by your intellect or skill, but by your willingness to do this stuff. So that kind of freed me up to have fun with kind of random
It's killing me
type
not to
stuff.
say this is the way, but go on.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, right. And I think ideally I usually try to go for a more organic approach. Like, would this wizard, like what kind of traps was this wizard have, right? What kind of person, are they, and so forth. But in this one, I got to be really random because they're kind of arbitrary things set in place. And one of the players hated it. And it was like there was a number puzzle, there was one of those, you know, what are they called, like left brain thinking type puzzles. There was a chess puzzle, there were riddles. It was like different. It was like each one was a little bit different because I thought let's give everybody a chance to show their various strengths. And one of them just hated it. He was a really good sport about it. He chimed in the chat. We're playing on Roll20 and kind of helped out with the riddles and stuff. But literally, his character sat down on the stairs and started flipping a coin, and it wasn't passive aggressive. It was like he's like, I cannot with this. And then they got to the whole end of this sort of gauntlet, and then they kind of stuck their heads back. Went, okay, you can come to do the fight now. That was at the
That's
end.
kind of awesome.
Yeah, but because we've built up trust as a group, we knew that he wasn't, you know, being a jerk. We knew that, it's sort of okay to tap out. And
Right.
I think that's really important. But he did not have a great time. Like some of the others really got into these puzzles. Um, but he wasn't miserable, right? Because he was having fun watching them struggle with, the different kinds of puzzles. So I think it really, really, really is going to depend on the GM's relationship with a party. And I think with a new group, that's tough. It does take some time to build up that trust.
What
So yeah,
kind
we'll
of
throw it there.
what kind of is this cool though, by the way, that I've kind of shifted to asking you a bunch of questions
No,
about some of the ways
feel
we
free.
can
Yeah,
do
go
it?
for it.
Okay, awesome. Um, what kinds of ways, like for newer DMs and newer GMs, um, the pitfalls are many, right? So what are some, I don't want to say low-hanging fruit gotchas that newer game designers can avoid?
Ooh, that's a good.
Is that
So,
too much of an essay question?
I mean, it's a little bit of an essay question, so I don't know. I tend to think with my mouth, so I might get rambly. Um, I mean, it depends on what you're starting with. Are you starting from scratch, or are you taking my shortcut of adapting in a pre-existing,
Okay, so let's
little
say it's
map or
me.
dungeon? Sorry?
So let's
Okay.
let's pretend it's me.
Okay, go for
And I'm not saying I've read every last one of these, and then this whole shelf here.
it. Right.
Um, so for me, it would probably be all right. Let's find out. Let's pick a universe. Let's pick a platform. Uh, let's find out who'd be game to play.
Hmm.
Let's find out with each of those sort of a session -1 with each of those folks. Okay, what do you want to do? Like, how do you want to play this game? What turns you on about this? What are you not so psyched
Yeah.
about? Like, and then um before going to session 0, then taking that information and start picking and choosing from a variety of sources.
Yeah.
Let's start with a one shot. Let's talk about how, to map out where this is going to happen, what are some of the variables. You know, me, I would dive into the internet probably and find some great starting places. And then session 0 with folks, with, a list of all the things,
Hmm.
but and it's impossible to determine all of the ways that things can fail because things are going to fail, period. That's kind of the nature of,
Yeah. No, no,
the
no
nature of the
plan survives
universe.
contact with the party.
Right. Right. But there have to be some initial, yeah, you're going to want to do this, but you don't really need to dig that deeply into, these areas. And I'm curious to know what your take is on what those might be.
Yeah, well, I mean, I love the idea of like a session -1. And you can do that, if you're playing online or even if you're not, you can do that via email or on Discord. My group, we play in Roll20, but our conversation, our video chat is in Discord. So that's a great place to talk even early on, even before you're really playing, about what people like and don't like. And there's a lot of really great resources. I've seen them on YouTube and then just on people's blogs and stuff. And there's probably some on DM's Guild where it's like like questions about your character, and it's asking you some things that, just kind of help you formulate your character. And
Yeah.
I think you could submit that to your GM, and that could initiate a conversation about it. Another thing that I find really helpful, and I know I'll answer your actual question in a minute, but like I said, I think with my mouth.
No, this is great.
um, is you can do, if you have time and spoons, little one-on-one, like just there's a lot of like, you don't even have to do the legwork, because there's a lot of decent, like little one-on-one, I think in this world where it's hard to get a group together, people are creating little one shots and stuff for solo players. Or you could just take a regular, like, low level one shot and kind of nerf it a little bit.
Yeah.
But if you have time to do a one-on-one with a player, um and it's a good chance for them to audition that character, like, is this feel okay for me? I know a
Hey,
lot of GMs
try the
will allow
voice, see
people
if
to
it sucks.
change. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, look, this is a game, right? This is not a job. It's supposed to be fun. So yeah, try it out.
Well,
I
that's
mean, I
funny because
think,
it can be, but I'll come back to that later.
well, right. I mean, I think for most, I should say, for most people,
Most of us.
most of
Yeah.
us, yeah. I mean, I think, I, I mean, for me, I avoid heavy stuff early on. My games tend to be on the more chaotic, comical side. Like, even as a GM, I'm kind of a rogue. And actually, in my other online campaign where I'm a player, I'm a trickster cleric, so I'm still basically playing a rogue anytime I can. And so I try to avoid, especially early on, really heavy stuff. And by heavy stuff, I don't mean horror, because if that's the vibe of your group and that's what the players want, and you've gone over your safety tools in session 0 and all that. But I mean, like, really emotionally engaging stuff,
Hmm.
tragic backstory stuff, whatever. And I think that works good. And again, maybe a first session is a good chance to use some of these packaged modules that you've adapted, because then if something goes wrong, it's not breaking your heart. You've got a
Right.
time left to start with
I
that
spent
second one or whatever.
so long drawing this map.
Right? Why did you go there? I almost nuked my party one time because the druid had just gotten as I think it's Windwalk, and I had built in all these fun little encounters across this, several hundred, hundreds and hundreds of miles of travel, and they just flew over them as clouds. And I was just like, what about the village of anthropomorphic goat people you were gonna meet? Like, it's just like, what is
Oh,
happening? I was so mad. But I did not use my words and express that I was mad, and that's one thing we all work on in our lives, right? Um, but yeah, I would go with something lighter in tone. I think I love a lot of like prepackaged uh events, or little adventures for that, right? Like, I
yeah.
think my in-person party, our first adventure, literally was going to a town and trying to recover this apple pie recipe from this bakery that the baker had died and had been taken over by goblins, and yada yada yada. And it was super fun and kind of silly, and it gave us a chance to get used to working with each other without it
Yeah.
being like, the great heavy tragic. I love getting into that emotional stuff, but kind of start building trust with your party and getting used to it. So that's my main low hanging fruit, would be like real heavy emotional engagement
So
up
you
front.
brought up an interesting point, and this is kind of a hard pivot, but I want to talk about something that's like a definitely a down the road kind of
Sure.
a challenge. Have you ever experienced or planned for a TPK? Total party kill.
Yeah. Actually, I have never planned for one. I have GM'd a close call a couple, like, month, I think in March or late February. And I knew it was going to be a really tough fight. It was like one of those. We don't tend to do this all the time because, some of my players, they're great role players, and that's what they enjoy. And a couple of them love, like, every now and then they really love the combat. So we always have a little combat. But this was a rare thing where it was literally the entire session. It was like 3.5 hours. It was just super complicated, and there were a lot of different parts. And I don't love doing that very often, but it was, and they told me later, it's really important, by the way, if you're a GM, to check in with your players, have a little debrief, after a session, or maybe you can do that in Discord or wherever you're connecting
Okay.
with people. And if you're a player, ask if your group would do that, because that can be as an ongoing process of learning what works and what doesn't. But that was one where I knew going in it was going to be rough. The party's high level. I think they're like 13th level or something like that now. So, I mean, they're fighting big boys. But I've never intended for one. I just, they
Right.
like the occasional challenge. And it wasn't really a dungeon. It was a bridge. It was just a bridge that they had to cross, was
Still
be guarded
counts.
by ballista, and I had just set it up. I mean, this sort of goes with the design component, right? Like, how wide is it and where are the bad guys coming from? And to my party's astonishment, they were crawling up over the side of the bridge like the orcs in Moria. You know how the orcs just
Oh, yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
pour down like insects, except they were coming up, and there were ballista at the end of it and stuff. So kind of setting up those things. It's a really fun challenge, I think, at least every now and then. I'm maybe about to have a TPK in my player one. My husband has been reviewing Resurrection and how he wants to do it, and
Mm.
Matt Mercer has kind of his homebrew way he handles Resurrection, and so my husband has been researching Resurrection, and he told me, he's the GM. He wasn't keeping it a secret, but I feel like this. I think she's a lich. We don't know what she is exactly, but I
Dun,
think we're about to face a lich, and I
dun.
think since I'm the cleric, but not a very good one, I'll be partly responsible if there's a TPK. But in the past, my campaigns often didn't last long enough to get to a really high level.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, I did play Descent into Avernus during quarantine, and that was I think we lost. There were a couple of encounters where we lost half the party.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, that's the way that module's designed. It's a tough one. So,
Um,
I don't know. Have you
this
have you
is
had a TPK? Do you mind if I throw it back to you?
no, no, and
Yeah,
I'm trying to figure out how I could do that in I'm writing a novella series
yeah.
that's I mean I'm as much as I have played in D&D and now I'm working on character creation pre-session 0 for a
Ooh.
I'm playing Pathfinder
Oh, cool.
with a bunch of other lesbian authors. Actually, we're calling it Dykes with Dice, and
I love
no,
it.
I know that was organic. And I wanted to say that's a little. No, actually, that's accurate. That's fine. Let's roll with that. And um, but for this series that I'm working on, it's I'm more of a sci-fi space nerd, and I'm trying to figure out how to take probably like not the entire party, because you can't just reset a series of I guess my group would be buys with knives. That's awesome. I like it.
Still totally still in your idea.
Yeah, no, that works. Share with everyone. Um that you can't get people invested in a series and then kill off all the characters unless you're going to
Right.
revive them in some way. Like, no,
Sure.
it's kind of in the rules. Um but I am thinking about doing a fake out. How many people are here? Okay, so when you read the series, you'll know, and don't tell anyone what's coming. That where I split the party into two ships and I kill one of the ships off.
Split the party.
Well, first of all, rule number one: don't split the
Yeah.
party. And if you split the party, bad things happen. Well, duh,
But if
bad
you're the
things
DM, split the party. Or at
exactly.
least give them
So
opportunities to split themselves and suffer.
uh exactly. So I'm gonna do that, and that's probably the closest I'll get. Although after last week, well, this is 2 weeks ago, I thought we were all gonna bite it in a really stupid, shitty dungeon, but pardon
Ugh,
my
I'm
language.
sorry. Well, I was thinking earlier before you asked me the question about what makes a difference between a good and a great dungeon, before I started chewing on that. One of the things I was thinking is that a good dungeon, is kind of invisible, right? Like as you're going through it, you're not thinking about the design so much, you're thinking about the effect of it. And so I think a lot of it is how you use it, right? And ships are great, dungeons, if you will, settings, because or spaceships or sailing ships or airships or whatever, because you're in this confined space, right? It's great for horror. uh even, you get that sort of we're trapped in the haunted house. But it's great. There's all different kinds and designs of again, even ocean going ships come in all different shapes and sizes. Submarines are great because they're more like spaceships and they're really enclosed. But you can do a lot, right? How do you hide, or how do you escape, or how do you ambush in this microcosm? How do you deal with giant predators who are floating through the ether or the sea or whatever? How do you deal with
You
storms
know,
or debris and stuff? It's fast. It's
that's
really a great
it's such a good,
setting.
like you so one of the things that I think about a lot is that a dungeon isn't necessarily a dungeon. Like what makes a dungeon is less about the settings and is less about the slimy underground walls or and more about the the big bad slash big bads you've
Hmm.
got to deal with, the stakes, the characters, the goal. Like it's more about all of the parameters than it is
Right.
about a particular setting. And I was thinking a lot about this when I hit a block um in my novel. Sorry, I talk about my writing in context with this a lot because
Go
I
go
use
for it.
all nerdery to me is connected.
Yeah. No, for sure.
So I had a fight in a baseball field, like between war witches and vampires, and I kept hitting this wall of like, how can I do this? How can I make it so that how can you know what it is? How can I make this serious so that people don't go, wait, they're fighting in a baseball field? This is stupid. Um, and I ended up backing up and I'm like, okay, how would you define the parameters of a conflict in a game? Like, how would you build that? And that's exactly what you're doing here. And I don't mean to go all lit RPG on it, but it sort of it exploded a part of my brain, not mushroom style. We're not talking about those. Those things are creepy. It exploded a part of my brain to okay, dungeon is not necessarily about these things. Dungeon is about all of these things, right? And that's yeah, that's that. Sorry, I kind of even mentally went off on a tangent. It is absolutely encompassing. So hold on, I'm checking the questions to see about uh, uh, sort of another deal about that. Yeah, different kinds of dungeons based on game mechanics and setting. So other than
Mhm.
the bridge, what are some other ways that you have kind of messed around with this concept of dungeon? And I want to tell you, I'm writing down this bit about a really good one is when they don't know they're in one, right? When you don't
Oh
know that that's what's
yeah.
going on. And that's, until you say
Interesting.
roll initiative, man, it's
Yeah.
free game.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's cool. I think, I mean, like you said, you don't necessarily always know you're in a dungeon. Anything could be a dungeon, right? A city
Mhm.
street, a mountain path, a ship, any of that kind of stuff. And I think I got distracted. That was such a good idea. What specifically did you like? I was thinking about your idea. Oh, what
I think we
what
should
kind
just
of
run with
control?
it. Like
Yeah. Well, I
like
think
it's
I
so
remember.
it's so expansive,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it is to think about what in this environment challenges the players or the characters and what helps them, right? So there's monsters or allies who are being held prisoner, or the city guard is going to be walking by or whatever, like those kinds of things. But there's also like slippery moss, right? That makes it difficult for them to keep their footing. Or there's blizzards or avalanches or those kinds of environmental hazards and those kinds of things. So I think thinking about the enemies or the opponents, the things that you engage with, are more than just the creatures, right? And
right?
that's one thing I always really. It's great just for color, even if it's not doesn't have a tactical effect. Like what does it feel like? What does it smell like? Um, you watch some actual plays and some of the descriptions are just like so florid and wonderful. It's okay if you don't, if you're not an accomplished novelist, you can think about maybe jot down cool details. What would a cave feel like or smell like?
Right.
What is this primeval forest? What do I hear? What do the players hear? And those kinds of things can add atmosphere. They
Mm-hmm.
can throw the players off, right? Like the kinds of birds and animal sounds. Are those actually birds, or are those scouts from the
Right, right,
tribe
right.
of goblins signaling each other? So there's a lot of fun things you can do with just environmental elements that I think really make the dungeon more memorable and make it come to life more, but also can really have a tactical effect as well, right?
So I'm getting a kick out of every time you answer my previous question, it leads me into my next question because of something that you said. So, one of the things that kind of drives me nuts is when, and this is a personal thing, is, oh, we're gonna go fight some beasties. Oh, we're fighting beasties again.
Right.
Oh, look. Oh, look. It's, bugbears. Oh, today it's, and sure, that's fun. Sometimes that's great. Go hack and slash and hack the thing and loot the corpses. Again, personal favorite. But one of the things that really caught my attention was when my GM switched it up and we walked through a field of flowers and the flowers fucked us up. I mean, messed us up. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Kind of a
Wow.
poppies kind of
Hmm.
a thing.
Hmm.
So what kinds of ways do you incorporate variety
Yeah.
in your encounters? How do you know when
Interesting.
things are getting stale? How do you know when you need to change things up? And how do you do that?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I mean, again, if you're having a debrief and a discussion with your players, you can learn from them. But for me, if it's something that since I've been gaming for a long time, and I took a break off from D&D for a couple decades to play GURPS, which is super crunchy and numbersy, and it's fun, but it's its own thing. And if it's something that I played in 1993,
Mm-hmm.
then I take a real hard look at whether that's something I want to do now. Either just because it's stale and cliched, and there's a good chance that my other players, some of whom are my age, will be familiar with. But also because it might be problematic in different ways. I don't think my party has ever actually fought goblins. There was one time they encountered them, but they were kind of under the sway of this evil wizard, and so kind of the twist, if you will, was that they could have fought them. They could have fought all. They were high enough level. They were like 60 goblins or something.
Oh, wow.
Tiny, low CR, right?
Yeah,
That's no fun. You know, Fighting a zillion kobolds who are defending the dragon, or whatever. It's just no fun. So I think giving some agency to your opponents is one of the best ways to keep those kinds of things from getting boring and stale. Because
I'm totally taking
why
notes.
would yeah why would they fight you, right? Well, wouldn't they, when you hurt them badly, or when you kill one, I mean, a lot of times the others are just gonna run away or surrender or whatever, and that's a different thing.
Hmm.
And with the goblins who were in the wizard's thrall, it turns out they hated him, and the players, because they didn't go in the normal way, encountered their little kind of their basement sort of cavern, kind of lair where he
Hmm.
had them live, and they didn't ally with them to fight against the wizard, but they didn't fight each other. The goblins were like, "Oh, you're gonna take that guy down? Thank you, thank you so much."
Hmm.
And so I think giving opportunities for those encounters to go a different ways um, is always fun, because a fight is, I mean, fights can do different things, right? There's different tactics and techniques, but I think fights are more similar to each other, whereas social encounters, especially if your party is interesting and they're engaged, literally infinite options for how those can go. So that's one of the main things I think. Old school D&D, and I'm so glad this has been changing. You knew by looking at somebody. I think of it as the red wall rules, right? All the mice are good, and all the wizards or weasels are evil. You know by looking at someone. And oh boy, does that have a lot of really dangerous implications for actual human life and history and white supremacy and stuff, colonialism.
Yeah.
So my players have, we don't. I mean, they've encountered. The only time I do random encounters is when we're traveling, and I try to make them kind of fun and give them some options. And they encountered some orcs who were trying to herd these giant goats, and the players just ended up like, "Oh my god, the quickest way to get by these guys is just to help them round up these damn goats." And so that's what they ended up doing, right? So I think anytime you're
So your
planning an
party of goat
encounter,
herders?
they turn them into goat. I mean, they turn themselves into goat herders. I just kind of put this in front of them, knowing that it could go. They could have fought them. They could have gone different ways. So sort of building in different options where it's not like. I think I had them fight these sort of like this dragon cult, not the dragon cult, but just a homebrew one, and it was just fighting, 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 and it was so tiresome. Um, if that's part of your narrative, right? If having a big fight with a group who is not going to give up or surrender because they're cultists or whatever. First of all, you don't have to do that. Like you can decide to make them something else, even if it's a package, even if you're playing, Avernus or whatever. But also you can do skill challenges, and that's something that I've started instituting. And my players really like it. I mean, not all parties would, but I can't remember. I got the idea off some blog, and I don't remember if it was something that MT Black had put in their newsletter. But anyway, skill challenges, right? So, like, if there's a horde of zombies,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I'm going to give you X number of rolls, and it's usually, like, depending on how big the party is, maybe you need, if you've got 5 players, maybe say you need 5 successes before you get 3 or 2 or however much of a hard ass you want to be. And then they tell me what they're going to do on their turn, right?
Yeah.
So the fighter, I've got a tanky fighter guy, and he's like, I'm just gonna barrel through him. I've got a radiant sword and a great big shield, and I'm just gonna full on, like it's Black Friday and I'm the first one in the door or the third one in the door at Walmart, just
Yeah.
plow through, and the other party in my wake. And so I had him roll, and you sort of figure out, you can think about what's the DC, what are they rolling, are they casting a spell, or are they trying to persuade, or you probably couldn't persuade
Whatever.
zombies, but you know
Yeah.
what I mean. They tell you, and you can kind of help them a little bit, what they're trying, um, and then they succeed or fail, and then you're not having 10 or 12 rounds of combat an outcome that was probably predetermined, like um this, and I know there's a lot of different rules for how to deal with, I think is it the dungeon dudes or somebody else on YouTube who has like the minions rule, right? There's like specific rules for like large groups. And so that can be a fun way to, you know, to just not, I think combat can become very tedious. So having either doing a skill challenge, set of things, or tweak it or throw them a curveball is a good way to
So
handle it.
this brings up yet another interesting question. And at any time, if you want to fire some back, I'm just having a really good time. You got great
Sure,
answers.
yeah, yeah. No, me too. This is great.
Um, uh, how much time do you spend plotting contingencies? Seriously, like you never know when things
Yeah.
are going to go off the rails, and you
Oh,
gotta,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, this will not come as a shock to anyone who has been paying attention to this conversation. A little bit chaotic by nature. So I don't like plan out contingencies in that like a chess game,
hmm
because I am terrible at chess because I am too chaotic.
awesome.
Um,
Let's play for money.
right, exactly. Let's do cards. That's much better. Um, so I don't. I sort of have in mind, like if I'm putting an opponent or a group of opponents in their path, I really treat that like a full NPC. Like I really do. I really give thought to what's important to them, what they care about, that kind of stuff. And then that's sort of my guide, right? Is this a
Right.
person who's going to surrender? Is this a person who could be persuaded or intimidated? Or how likely are they to notice your ambush? Do they have a high passive perception, or those kinds of things? And so then that keeps me from having to do detailed, kind of plans, because I'm not good at it. If you're good at it, power to you, go for it, do that, plan out. But I just kind of have like little points, almost like, what are those mind maps people do? I
Yeah,
know
yeah,
my
yeah.
hands are super chaotic. I know I think
Oh
with
no,
my
I
mouth and
totally.
talk with my
This
hands.
is
It's a problem.
actually the gesture for mind map. This is
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the official. Yeah. So you can do something like that, right? Like, what are some of the things, um, that might happen or that might come to bear on this? Um, I think DMs have to either be good or get good at improvisation, though. And like, it's totally okay if your players throw you for a curveball or throw you a curveball to say, hey guys, let's take a bio break. Let's take 10 minutes. And then that gives you a chance to kind of think through, like, you're not performing on an improv stage in front of hundreds of people. Like, it's okay for you to sort of take 5 or 10 and kind of collect your thoughts a little bit.
Nice.
And if your players get mad about that, screw them.
I,
They probably want to get more Coke or another beer anyway. So,
right, right. You're out of chips. Go get some more Doritos.
right,
Anyway,
exactly.
um, so I want to talk just tools for a second.
Okay.
And I want to talk offline tools and online tools. So um let's go 20th century for a minute. Are there offline tools, references, in addition to the usual, DM guide or um standard Wizards of the Coast guides? Are there any other offline references that you use often or would recommend? We'll get to online in a minute because
Yeah,
that's kind of
yeah, yeah.
ubiquitous, but
So I think I might have said this in my bio for the conference. I am a recovering academic. I was a medievalist in another life, and so I love. I'm just fascinated by the period. I've translated Beowulf. I'm that kind of nerd also. Like I'm
got it.
multi nerdle.
All nerdery is
So I
related.
love like I really just love like things about like castles and castle design and the difference between a hill fort and a barbican and all that. So I really nerd out about that. If that's an interest that you have, or if you're planning, a big, a dungeon that is based around a castle, what is what, and you can do it. It doesn't have to be European, right? There's different sorts of castles for different climates in different parts of the world, or different sorts of fortifications, right?
Mhm.
So I love diving into that, and I will get inspiration, even if it's only aesthetic. Like I tend to do a lot of mood boards, like, not literally, but I do them like digitally, where I pull pictures, and I know I've jumped ahead to the 21st century thing, but even if
That's
you're
okay.
only
Listen, you're
using
cutting pictures out of magazines and
cutting pictures out of magazines or calendars, listen, go to your library, use book sale, go to your thrift stores. They've probably got stacks of National Geographics that people think are worth money and 100% are not worth money, that they would love for you to buy. And the great thing about those, the National Geographics, if you read the articles of the old ones, they're going to make you mad because they're super colonialist and,
yeah, yeah.
Orientalist and stuff. But there's going to be some great pictures that you can use for
Dude, come on.
inspiration.
I'm Gen X. I got a stack of those in the other room. We
Yeah.
like
Oh no.
everybody,
My
it's a
husband,
thing.
yeah, it's a thing. So calendars are great. Like if you go in like late January to like wherever was selling calendars, they are thrilled to sell you, this year's calendar for cheap, and you get these gorgeous big full color pictures of Southeast Asian, mountains and landscapes, or Japanese castles, or or whatever, like French castles and manor houses and stuff. And again, great for inspiration, even if you're only using them for the aesthetics, because if you're connected to it, if you're enthusiastic and excited about it, even if it's you know literally a square with a couple of lines on it, but it's coming to life for you, and then you can paint that word picture or show them the literal mood board if you have one.
Yeah.
So I think those sort of non-gaming resources can be just like super valuable. Sorry, I got
Any
really loud and fast there. I get really
no, no,
excited about this. Sorry.
super, super. No, this is good. And any other sort of hard copy, old school gaming references that you?
I mean, there's just so many great, especially now, I think it's after the OGL fiasco, a lot of light has been shined on other publishers like Paizo or Kobold Press, Monty Cook. There's just a lot of really interesting stuff, and a lot of those are things that are specific to Cypher or Pathfinder or whatever. And if you're not willing to make that jump to a new system, though, it's pretty easy to port them. And I love old school modules. You can buy them as PDFs. You can still find the physical ones around. Again, even if I don't actually use the wacky, wild story that they're telling, like Castle Amber, we can talk about that in the Discord. That is some weird, messed up, crazy stuff. I mean, fun, but off the chain. But it's got
Wait,
great
did you
maps
say
and things.
Castle Amber?
Castle Amber is an old, like late 70s, early 80s. Matt Colville has a really funny video where he talks through it.
I'm
It's
sorry, my brain
bizarre.
just went to Zelazny, so I got
I
sidetracked.
know, right? It's definitely inspired by Zelazny. It is not literally connected,
Yeah,
but it's definitely inspired. But all those modules, first of all, they have great art,
yeah,
which is super fun and hokey. But they've all got maps and things again that you can either just lift, right? And use them, photocopy them, and use them in your group. You're totally allowed to do that if you've bought it, right? It's not That's what it's
yeah,
for. It's for You're not reselling it or anything. Or again, just as kind of your inspiration, as your mood board. Like, I think those old
S-
paper
yeah.
modules delight me no
And,
end.
and I bring those up, and I bring sort of offline tools up because the online tools, I think the bigger ones folks are aware of, right? And there's so many references, whether that's Roll20 or D&D Beyond, or some of the references that you mentioned earlier. Are there any, like you mentioned the DMs Guild, and are there any other things like those three that you refer to often? Oh, you're muted somehow.
I muted because I was typing. Sorry.
Oh, it's
I
okay.
follow a lot of D&D creators. Not just those sort of bigger names that like I mentioned on Instagram and YouTube, and some on Twitter. But I think Instagram and YouTube are more engaging for me because of the visual side. And so I think that's a great place to start. And you know how YouTube and Instagram and all social media work, right? You
Yeah.
find one or two and you watch them and you engage with them. And so then it says, how about this? How about this? How about this? How about this?
My God, I went
Um,
down a rabbit hole of terrain building.
oh gosh.
Because I started painting miniatures as one of my, we all picked up new hobbies during the
Yeah.
pandemic, and I started painting minis, and painting minis ultimately led to, well, I need a way to display them. I can't be just like, just put them in a case. Come on,
Right.
that's
You did
that's
all
not
that
sexy.
work.
I mean, that's not sexy. Not that I don't have a case on the wall. Uh, but I started looking at terrain, and the minute you go down the rabbit hill of the rabbit hole of terrain, like suddenly it's all over the place.
Yeah.
So
Do you know about
yeah.
the game on Instagram? This is like
No.
infamous, and I think it literally is just called The Game, but it's a D&D campaign that is very heavily kind of Warhammer inspired.
Yeah.
Um, and it's been going on like for 40 years or something. Like the same group has been gaming, and
Oh,
they have
those
full on
guys.
like a giant table
Those
with
guys.
terrain.
Yes.
Yeah, those guys. And I have no desire to, even if I had the wherewithal, to turn like a room of my house into D&D world, but
Oh
it's
my God, my
so
wife
cool
and
to
her
look at.
husband.
And again, it's inspiring. Like I see, this is what that would look like, or this is what that would be like. So even though I don't do the full terrain, I just draw, if in person, I just draw my maps out on a roll up,
Yeah.
whiteboard thing, white paper, dry erase is what I'm trying to say.
So I'm
Um,
keeping an eye on time because I suspect that you and I could talk for about 3 hours before we got
yeah,
super
I
bored.
know. It's
Um,
I'm like, how is it already almost time to be done?
I know. By the way, we are totally going to follow up after this. I think that you and I should totally chat. Okay.
Definitely.
So before we do the wrap up, does anyone have any questions? And while we're waiting for the questions to come in, um, usually we wait till the end for this, but is there anything that you want to give folks a shout about other than your
I want to.
amazing podcast? Which I got to tell you, so I try to prepare for panels like this by, of course, snooping via internet on my
Uh-oh.
counterpart. And I got distracted by your podcast because podcast rules are listen to the first one, listen to the most recent one, except Your first one and your most recent one are both characters that made me who I am.
Oh my gosh.
In addition to Shirako Jones from Titan Wizard and Demon by John Varley. So I'm like Corwin of Amber, Slippery Jim.
Mhm.
Oh my god! So
Yeah, yeah. Well, maybe you should come on and talk about Shirako Jones. I'm just saying.
you're on. I would totally do
Cool. All
that.
right, we'll connect. Yeah, thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. Yeah, the podcast that Virginia's talking about is called My Favorite Character, which you can find, wherever you find podcasts. It's been on a little bit of a hiatus because I've had some health issues and have been doing some plays, which both have kind of taken up a lot of my time. But it will be back. I have a couple kind of pre-recorded, ready to go, and it's just cool, interesting people talking about characters that were important or influential to them. So
That's
thank you for
awesome.
mentioning that. Yeah, I have a book that will be out later this year called Horn and Heart Sword, but no date yet. We're working on that.
All right,
What
well,
about
good
you?
luck with that.
What's going on with you? I loved hearing about your novellas.
So the novellas are still under development. My debut novel came out a couple of months ago. It's called Consecrated Ground. It's about a badass war witch who fights vampires using spellcraft. I will leave you to search the internet and check that out from your preferred bookseller. I'm working on my
Yeah.
second novel, not the sequel, although that's coming. I'm working on my second novel now called No Shelter But the Stars, which is absolutely my first love science fiction. Um, all of my characters are badasses in some fashion. All of them are absolutely unapologetically queer. All of them are super smart. I don't write dumb characters. There's just no point. Maybe I should try that for fun. But you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram. I'm on Facebook. Check out my website, Virginia Black Writes. And give me a shout after this if you want to talk more about nerdery. Okay, so Alex had a question. I'd love to hear a bit more about making puzzles for dungeons.
So I am not great at this. I have tried, and I think for me, it's hard for me to get a metric on the difficulty. So I hate to disappoint you, Alex. I usually steal them and like integrate them in, right? Um, so I did make one up, which was kind of those, if you've ever taken the SAT or the GRE, you have those logic puzzles, right? Like if Rachel is wearing blue, or Rachel's wearing blue and Tom is wearing green, Mincy can't sit next to Tom. And then you have to figure out like the whole thing. So I made one of those up and I was very proud of myself. And I realized as the group, this was in that puzzle dungeon I mentioned, as they worked it out, that there were at least two correct solutions, which is fine. It's not bad that there's more than one way to solve a puzzle, but I had so carefully worked it through so that there would only be one thing and they would have to figure it out, and was deflated when they kind of worked together and they presented their answer. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's the answer. Good for you. so,
That's
so I tend to
awesome.
steal them, or not really steal them. I tend to get them off of people's blogs and, stuff
That's
like
a
that.
really good question, or a really good comment. A couple of years ago, first of all, the 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 only good thing to come out of the debacle of this horrid plague that we've been enduring for the last 3 years is the interconnectivity, the absolute growth of all of this nerdery online, which was already there, but it's sort of a perfect storm of, I've always wanted to do this, I'm going to do it. I've always wanted to spend time on this, I'm going to do it. We can get in a room in Discord. Like the number of ways that you can now get into a room online to nerd out with other people. It's not just Zoom, it's not just Discord, it's not just I think Roll20 has that built in. It's not just, there's
Mhm.
so many ways that we can do that. And I got my hands on a bunch of random table generators for all kinds of things. And one of them was a book on random puzzles and traps. And there's at least 50 in there. There might even be as much as 100. And um, the random tables are kind of hilarious in that they're stupid things you would find in a sci-fi lab. Um, Possible cargo. drink names.
I love those.
Here's a bunch of traps, here's a bunch of output for those traps, you know. And so I think that like the number of resources available, you just like the way to find it basically is to just refine your search terms, because no matter
Mhm.
which way you go, you're going to find a ridiculous number of resources.
Yeah, and even a lot on Instagram. I've gotten in the habit of saving, those kinds of lists and things on Instagram, and then periodically, every couple of weeks I'll go through and, and literally just screenshot them. Um, and have them, as a resource. Like, here's that list of cool traps, or here's that list of wacky foods. My in-person group there's a drink called the Tarnation that I got off one of those lists that makes you burp fire if you fail your con check. And they
That
literally
sounds,
ask,
yeah.
isn't it hilarious? They literally ask for that at every tavern they go in.
Is
And
it like
most
a
of the people are like, what are you talking
pan-galactic
about?
gargle blaster
A
kind of a
bit,
thing?
yeah. Yeah, it's wonderful. So yeah, there's a ton of those. I think once you find a couple, like if you're on Instagram, others will be suggested for you. Your recommendations will be full.
I'm kind of flooding the chat with ways that y'all can ping me later if you want to check
Yeah.
something. And I believe since we're down to the wire, I want to make sure that that we thank the Dream Foundry for all things Flights of Foundry. This has been absolutely awesome. This is a great way to interact with other creators. I'm new to the fold. This is actually my first time, and I'm having a blast. I've met some really cool people. Oh, awesome. Yeah, Cheryl, we will do all of that. And I'm actually gonna try to gack most of this chat so that I
Yeah.
follow up on that.
Yeah. I think it
Uh,
gives you an option. It may not give the participants option, but I think it gives us an option to save it when we
Yeah, and I want
leave.
to make sure that we absolutely drop it in to
Yeah,
Discord where applicable. So that's super
for
smart.
sure, for
Thanks,
sure.
Cheryl, for making that suggestion. Um, all right, I want to make sure that folks get on time. It was really, really good to meet you and to
It
talk
was
with you.
good to
This has
meet
been
you. What
great.
fun. I can't wait to talk
Yeah.
more.
Awesome.
Thank you so
Okay.
much, Virginia. And thanks
All
to
right.
everybody for
So
coming.